You did it this morning. Somewhere between your first cup of coffee and the moment you left the house, you looked at a stranger and maybe on your feed, maybe on the street, and in less than half a second, your brain made a decision about who they are. You didn't choose to do it. You didn't even notice you did it, and here's the part that should stop you cold. They did the exact same thing to you. Right now, someone, somewhere, is quietly deciding what your outfit says about your income, what your silence in a meeting says about your intelligence, what your relationship status says about your worth. We call ourselves non-judgmental. We say it like a badge of honor. I don't judge anyone, but that sentence itself is a judgment. Because the truth is far stranger and far more human than we're willing to admit. The mind was never built to accept the world as it is. It was built to sort it, instantly, silently, relentlessly, into safe and unsafe, worthy and unworthy, like me and not like me. This isn't a story about bad people. It's a story about every person. And by the end of this, you won't just understand why people secretly judge everyone. You'll understand why you do it, and why that discovery might be the most freeing thing you hear all year. The hidden problem. Behind it is, here's what nobody tells you about judgment. It doesn't feel like judgment from the inside. It feels like knowing. You see a man yelling at a waiter, and in an instant, you know something about him. You see a woman crying alone in her car, and you know something about her too. You didn't ask for their story. Your brain wrote one for you, in milliseconds, and handed it to you as fact. This is the quiet tragedy of being human. We walk through our days convinced we are observing the world when really we are constantly authoring it. And the cruel irony, we do this most to the people closest to us. The friend who didn't text back, the partner who seemed distant at dinner, the parent who missed the recital. We don't wait for their explanation. We already have one, usually the worst one, before they even open their mouth. If you've ever felt a flash of judgment and then a flash of shame for feeling it, you're not broken. You're not a bad person hiding behind a kind mask. You are simply running software that is millions of years old in a world it was never designed for. Let's go back. Not years, not decades. Hundreds of thousands of years, back when a rustle in the grass could mean the wind or a predator. The humans who survived weren't the ones who calmly gathered all the evidence before deciding. They were the ones who judged fast and asked questions never. Neuroscientists have a name for the part of your brain responsible for this, the amygdala. It's small, almond-shaped, and ancient. Its entire job is to answer one question about everything you encounter, threat or not threat. It doesn't wait for context. Context is slow. Survival is fast. So when you meet someone new, their tone of voice, their clothing, their posture, even the speed of their walk, your amygdala is already filing them into a category before your rational mind has even woken up. Psychologists call this the fundamental attribution error, our tendency to explain other people's behavior through their character while explaining our own behavior through our circumstances. When you snap at someone, it's because you're exhausted, stressed, having a hard week. When someone snaps at you, they're just rude, just difficult, just that kind of person, same behavior. Two completely different stories. Because one of them, you lived from the inside, and the other, you only saw from the outside. There's something deeper, too. Something almost tender if you look closely. Judging others is often the mind's way of managing its own fear. Psychologist Carl Jung called it projection, the parts of ourselves we cannot accept, we unconsciously assign to others. The person who judges laziness most harshly is often terrified of their own. The person who judges failure most cruelly is often haunted by a failure they never forgave themselves for. Judgment, in this light, isn't really about them at all. It's a mirror we didn't know we were holding up. Picture a woman in an office meeting. She stays quiet while others speak over each other. Within seconds, her colleagues have written her story. Not confident. Not a leader. Maybe not even that smart. What they don't see is the version of her that grew up in a home where speaking up meant getting punished. Silence was survival. Now, in a boardroom decades later, her nervous system still remembers. Picture two old friends. One stops replying to texts for a week. The other builds an entire narrative. She doesn't care anymore. I probably said something wrong. Maybe she never really liked me. All of this constructed from silence. Meanwhile, the friend was simply drowning in a personal crisis she hadn't found the words to explain yet. Picture a father at his son's graduation, standing at the back, arms crossed, face unreadable. People around him whisper, "He doesn't seem proud, cold man." No one sees that he is holding back tears so hard his jaw aches, because pride, in the language he was raised with, was never allowed to show on the face. Picture yourself, scrolling through a stranger's photo. Before you even realize it, you've decided something about their intelligence, their values, their entire personality, from a single frozen frame of their life. This is what judgment does. It takes a photograph and calls it a biography. Let's bring this closer. Closer than documentaries usually go. Here are the quiet signs that judgment is running your life, often without your permission. Sign 1, the instant verdict. You meet someone and within seconds you already know them. This happens because the brain craves certainty more than accuracy. An uncertain world feels dangerous, so the mind rushes to close the loop, even with incomplete information. Example, you see a coworker in wrinkled clothes and immediately assume carelessness, when really they spent the night in a hospital waiting room. The emotional cost? You lose the chance to see the actual human being in front of you. Sign 2, comparing to feel safe. You catch yourself measuring your body, your salary, your relationship against someone else's, and quietly ranking yourself. This comes from what psychologists call social comparison theory. In the absence of clear standards, we evaluate ourselves by comparing to others. Example, seeing a friend's promotion and feeling a strange, uninvited sting of inadequacy. The emotional cost is subtle but corrosive. A joy that should have been shared becomes a private wound. Sign 3, judging what you fear in yourself. The trait that irritates you most in others is often the trait you're most afraid of holding. Someone obsessed with punctuality may feel rage at other people's lateness, because deep down, they fear being seen as careless themselves. The emotional cost? You spend energy attacking in others what you haven't yet forgiven in yourself. Sign 4, the silent courtroom. You imagine what others think of you, your outfit, your choices, your mistakes, and sentence yourself before anyone says a word. This is tied to something psychologists call the spotlight effect. We believe we are noticed and judged far more than we actually are. Example, replaying an awkward sentence you said hours ago, convinced everyone is still thinking about it, while they've already forgotten. The emotional cost is exhausting, living life as the defendant in a trial no one else is attending. Sign 5, judging speed as truth. The faster a judgment arrives, the more true it feels, even though speed has nothing to do with accuracy. This is the brain confusing fluency with fact. Example, disliking someone within the first 10 seconds of meeting them, then spending years unconsciously collecting evidence to prove that first snap judgment right. The emotional cost? Entire relationships lost to a decision made before a single real conversation happened. Sign 6, judging to belong. Sometimes we judge others simply to feel closer to the people around us. A shared eye roll, a quiet, "Can you believe her?" This taps into our deep evolutionary need for tribe. Agreeing on who is wrong creates a fast, fragile bond. Example, joining in on gossip about a mutual friend, not because you believe it, but because disagreeing might make you the next target. The emotional cost is a friendship built on shared cruelty instead of shared trust. Sign 7, judging your past self. Perhaps the cruelest judgment of all, the one aimed backward. You look at who you used to be, the mistakes, the naivety, the person who stayed too long or trusted too easily, and you judge them as harshly as any stranger. The emotional cost is a wound that never gets to close because you keep reopening it in the name of growth. Each of these signs feels small on its own, a flicker, a passing thought. But add them up across a lifetime and you begin to see the architecture of a mind that has been quietly, exhaustingly, at war, with the world and with itself. Here is where the story changes. Judgment is not a flaw in your character. It's not proof that you're cynical, cold, or somehow worse than people who don't judge. It is proof that you have a functioning brain, one built by millions of years of survival, doing exactly what it was designed to do. What you've misunderstood is this. The goal was never to stop judging. That would mean fighting your own biology forever and losing every time. The goal is to notice the judgment the moment it arrives and choose deliberately whether to believe it. Psychologists call this metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. It's the difference between being your thoughts and watching your thoughts. The moment you can say, "Interesting, I just judged that person, I wonder why," you've stepped outside the reflex. You've taken the pen back from the ancient, fearful part of your brain that's been writing your story without your permission. This is genuinely hopeful news. You are not doomed to judge unconsciously forever. You are simply invited, and for the first time maybe, to become conscious of the process. So how do you actually do this? Not with vague advice like be kinder, with real practical tools. First, name it before you believe it. When a judgment arises, silently say to yourself, "That's a judgment, not a fact." Neuroscience shows that simply labeling an emotional reaction reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, and activates the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reasoning. This is called affect labeling. In practice, next time you think she's so arrogant, pause and mentally rename it. I noticed a judgment about arrogance. That tiny shift creates space between reflex and belief. Second, ask the second story. Every judgment is your brain's first story about someone. Practice asking, what's a second possible story? If a friend seems cold, the first story is she doesn't care. The second story might be she's overwhelmed and doesn't have words yet. This trains what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to hold more than one explanation at once, which weakens the grip of snap judgment. Third, turn the mirror inward, gently. When you notice a strong reaction to someone's trait, ask, is there a version of this in me that I haven't accepted yet? This isn't self-blame, it's self-honesty. Carl Jung believed that what we refuse to see in ourselves, we are doomed to see and condemn in others. Reclaiming that projection is one of the most quietly powerful acts of emotional maturity. Fourth, replace verdicts with questions. Instead of, she's lazy, try asking, even just internally, I wonder what she's carrying that I can't see. You don't need the answer. The question alone softens the certainty. And certainty, remember, is what judgment feeds on. Fifth, extend to your past self what you're learning to extend to others. The same compassion you're building for strangers, the benefit of the doubt, the unseen context, belongs to the person you used to be. They were doing the best they could with the brain, the wounds, and the information they had at the time. None of these tools erase judgment.
They simply return your power to choose what you do with it. Maybe the most important thing to understand is this. Every single person you will ever meet is fighting a battle you cannot see.
Carrying a history you were never given the pages to, and so are you. The people who judged you unfairly were not seeing you. They were seeing their own fears, wearing your face for a moment. And the people you judged unfairly, they were never fully seen by you either. Not because you're cruel, because you're human, running the same ancient program every human before you has run, back to the very first fire, the very first shadow in the grass. There is a strange kind of peace in this. If judgment is universal, then it was never truly personal. The critic in your head, the whispers you imagine behind your back, the verdicts you've quietly passed on strangers, none of it was ever the full truth. It was only ever a flicker of a fearful ancient mind, trying clumsily to keep you safe. Think of the mind like an old lighthouse keeper, one who has stood watch for so many centuries that he no longer remembers there's no war left to fight. He still scans the horizon for danger out of pure habit, casting suspicious light on every passing ship, even the ones carrying no threat at all. You don't have to fire the lighthouse keeper. You just have to walk up, sit beside him, and gently remind him, it's all right now. You can let some ships pass without sounding the alarm. That, in the end, is what growth really is. Not the absence of judgment, but the presence of awareness beside it. If even one sign in this video felt like looking into a mirror you didn't expect to find, tell me which one in the comments. I read every single one, and I promise you, you are not alone in this. If this changed even slightly how you see yourself or someone you judge too quickly, share it with them, not to prove a point. Just because someone, somewhere, might need permission to be gentler with themselves today, and if you want more of these quiet truths about the mind, the ones nobody teaches us, but everybody needs, stay, subscribe. This is only the beginning of understanding yourself, because the moment you stop judging yourself for judging others is the moment you finally come home to yourself.